For a while it seemed that the 718 GT4 couldn't match the popularity of its predecessor. However, recent value developments revealed that the tides have turned and that the 718 GT4 might be a winner after all. What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now I think it is fair to say that the hype surrounding the introduction of the 718 GT4 was less than what it was for the 981 GT4. When the 981 GT4 was introduced, prices skyrocketed and went on a roller coaster ride. However, after this period of volatility they settled down at more reasonable levels. Last year's GT4 video showed, for example, that the median price point only dropped by $4,700, and some people expected that this stability could be interrupted by the release of the 718 GT4, meaning that people would trade in their 981s for the newer 718 GT4, something which would increase supply in the 981 market and decrease prices. Yet, this is not what happened. Let's have a look at the data and figure out how the values of both cars developed in last year's volatile market and how the introduction of the 718 impacted 981 values. We start by having a quick look at the current market, just so we are all on the same page. Over here we have the US GT4 market with the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. Now this graph reveals that there are currently 27 718 GT4s for sale and 40 981 GT4s. And this is of course an interesting situation. Usually supply is higher for the newer car, but more about that later. Besides the difference in supply, we can also see a large difference in the pricing. The median price for a 981 sits at $100,000, while this is $137,000 for a 718. So it's quite a stretch from the older to the newer car. You can also see that the price variation is relatively high. Now besides the differences in mileages, the spec level has an important role in this. Especially the presence of the ceramic composite brakes can increase the price level. Alright, we're up to date now on the current market, and that means that it's time to look at the price development over time. But before we continue, if you like this video, please click on the like button below as it really helps to support the channel. Thank you. But now then, the price developments. Over here we can see the values over time in orange for the 981 GT4 and in blue for the 718 GT4. And there's a lot to discuss here. We will first have a look at the individual price developments and then draw some comparisons. Let's start with the 981. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, after the launch of the 981 GT4, values went on a roller coaster ride. But as you can see, I don't have data from that period. I only have it from the more calmer period. We can see that price fluctuations were limited. Between June 2019 and February 2020, prices came down by 3.2% or $3,000. And even though that this is a small decrease, it's the largest decrease in the market from June 2019 onwards. Now coincidentally, June 2019 was also the month in which the press release about the 718 GT4 was published. This price decrease over here is then also statistically confirmed, which means that it is unlikely to be the result of chance. Whether or not that's linked to the introduction of the 718 GT4 is of course difficult to say. What do you think? Is this price decrease over here the direct result of the introduction of the 718 GT4? Let me know down below in the comment section. Now then, from that point onwards, the price decrease started to decrease. Between February 2020 and December 2020, they only dropped with 1.8% or $1,700. And note that during this period, the first 718 GT4 started to enter the market. So if there was any effect from that car during that period, it was that it lowered the price decrease. But again, this is just speculation. We can't derive this directly from the data. Moreover, this price drop over here is not statistically confirmed, so it might be the result of chance. But now then, after December 2020, the trend changed. Maybe already a bit before that. We can namely see that between December 2020 and April 2021, prices increased by 6.3% or $5,700, and that's a large jump for a relatively short time period. We can then also see that in the most recent period, the market started to cool down a bit as the price increase was only 4.2%. And the price developments what you see in this graph seems to represent the real development. It goes for the low, the mid and the high mileage cars. They all show the exact same pattern. Additionally, we can also see that it matches to a large extent with the auction data from Bring a Trailer. Over here we can see that prices set between $80,000 and $100,000 for roughly 2 years. After that there was a slight dip in the market, and since the summer of 2020 we can see a recovery. Now we can't say the same for the 718 GT4 market. The price development over there looks different. We can see that after its introduction, prices went up with 1%, but this increase is so small that it's not statistically confirmed. However, the price increase accelerated in 2021. In the first 4 months of the year, they increased with 2.8%, and in the 4 months after that with 10.6%, or $13,000. And this means that the median price for a 718 GT4 sits currently at $137,000. Now, if we are a bit rough with the numbers here, then we can take the MSRP price of a GT4, which is $101,000, and add 20 to 30% to this for options. This gives us a price somewhere between $121,000 and $131,000, and that's way below the $137,000 what we see right here. So the cars are currently selling quite a bit above MSRP. And this is also what you can find when you read through the various Porsche forums. Now, of course, the whole car market is up, but this price behavior over here is rather strange. For the 981 we can see a flattening of the increase, while the 718 shows an acceleration. The 718 GT4 is then also not just riding the market trend. There's more going on, and that we can see perfectly with the following graph. Over here we have the development of the supply, the median mileage and the median model year. And we can see some very large movements on the supply side. If we look again first to the 981, we can see that the trend was downwards for a long time, and that supply was at its low in April of this year. And it was also in this period that we saw the most severe price increase. Are these two events linked? Maybe. Now, the supply pattern, what we can see in the 981 market, also emerges in other markets. Especially during lockdown, supply was decreased severely, and now it slowly starts to recover from that. Interestingly, when supply was at its low, also the median mileage was 2,000 miles below its previous median. And this is rather extraordinary. One could expect that this line would only go up, as there are no brand new 981 GT4s added to the market. This can then also mean one out of three things. The people who bought the cars preferred cars with slightly higher mileage, causing a decrease in the median mileage. Or people who were sitting on low mileage examples decided that it was the right time to sell as the market recovered. Or finally, it's just a result of chance, as the supply was so low that it might not have reflected the market adequately. It's simply very difficult to say without having additional information. In any case, during the last 3 months supply more than doubled, and this might be a reason as to why we see a flattening in the price trend. Now, when we look at the 718 market, we can see a completely different pattern. During the summer of last year, supply was very low, as there were only 14 cars for sale. After that though, we can see a very large spike, as supply was pushed up to 111 cars. And this spike is the result of new cars which were put up for sale. You can then also see that the median mileage remained at 0 and that the median model year increased by 1 year during that spike. Remarkably, after that spike in December 2020, supply plummeted. There were only 23 cars for sale in April of this year and 27 in August. And these are almost exclusively used cars. Alright, so what exactly happened here? In March 2021, Porsche became aware that the connecting rod might crack. And this concerns all the 6-cylinder Caymans and Boxsters, and therefore also the 718 GT4. Porsche therefore issued a stop sale in April and a recall for the already sold cars. Also, if you read the red list topic on the stop sale, you can see that new cars were delayed by 3 to 6 months due to this issue. Now, I couldn't find any messages which indicated that the stop sale would have been removed, and based on the current supply numbers it still seems to be in place. But if you know more about that, please let me know down in the comment section. So the stop sale is one reason as to why supply shrunk. Another one might be the shortages in the chip sector, but I couldn't find any hard evidence that it affected the 718 GT4 model. Up until now, Porsche handled the shortage quite well, so maybe it's not reasonable to attribute the supply drop fully to the chip shortage. However, to wrap this up, the decrease in supply does provide us with a reasonable explanation as to why we've seen an acceleration in the prices. Supply was and is way too low for current demand, so prices went up. And after all of those numbers, let's do a little recap. We looked quite detailed into the price developments for the 981 GT4 and 718 GT4, and we tried to explain some of the differences in the price development. We saw that 981s might have dipped initially because of the 718 GT4 announcement, but that there is a fair bit of speculation in that argument. One can also think of other reasons, such as an increase in the mileage. We also saw that momentarily, prices are up in both markets, but that the trend development differs. But now then, there are still two useful things to do here. The first one is to compare the price development in the GT4 market to the normal Cayman market, and the second one is to compare it to the development in the GT3 market. If we start with the first comparison, then we might get an insight as to how much of the GT4 price is idiosyncratic and how much is caused by them following the market trend. There are statistical techniques to calculate this, but I don't have enough data points for that. So let's see how far we can come with some common sense. Over here we have now the price development in the GT4 market, just like we had before. But I also included the price trends for the base models of the 981 and 718 Cayman generations. And I don't even need to insert the relative price increases here. We can already see that there are large similarities in the price trend. Between Q1 2020 and now, all cars went up in price, just like the rest of the used car market. Prices increased with 13, 10, 12 and 17%. It's only after April 2021 that we can see a deviation in the 718 GT4 market. Prices went up with 11%, and as we discussed earlier, this increase over here might be so large due to the stop sale. So I think it is fair to assume that for this period over here, the price developments for these cars were predominantly influenced by the used car market trend, and that, maybe with a small exception for the 718 GT4, the influence of idiosyncratic factors was low. So what about the second comparison? After all, if we look at the value development of the 991 GT3, we might learn something as to how the values reacted to the introduction of the 992 GT3. And that again might be helpful for the Caymans. Over here we have now in orange also the value development for the 991 GT3s. And as you can see, there doesn't seem to be any effect of the 992 introduction on 991 prices. On the contrary, 991 prices are insanely high, as they went up with 42% in the last 8 months. And this is in line with some of the other extremes which we saw in the market. Now if you want to know more about this price increase or the underlying price drivers, then I recommend that you check out the full GT3 market analysis by clicking on the pop-up banner right over there. We will now wrap up and conclude. So I think it is clear that there is no hard evidence that 981 GT4 values are really affected by the introduction of the 718 GT4. We saw a price decrease after the announcement of the 718 GT4, but the decrease is so small that it's very difficult to link the two events. We also saw that between Q1 2020 and Q1 2021, prices developed rather similar. It's only during the last 4 months that we can see a deviation. The price increase is more severe in the 718 GT4 market, but this might just be the result of the stop sale. Something which didn't affect the 981 GT4 market. The price development in that market is then also very similar to what we saw, for example, in the 718 and 981 base market. And with that we arrive at the end of this video. Now if you like this data-driven way of analyzing car markets, but would have liked to see the analysis for a different car, let me know down below in the comment section for which car you would like to see an analysis. Also don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.